August 13th, 2019 meeting of the City of Davenport Historic Preservation Commission. If you have a cell phone, please place it in the silent mode or turn it off. We welcome everyone at home on the city's cable TV channel. The commission has before it the consideration of the July 9th meeting minutes and the July 9th, 2019 work session minutes. Are there any changes, deletions, or additions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the minutes are approved. We'll move on to communications. Ryan and I have received an email. He will forward it to the commission on Friday, September 6th and Saturday, September 7th. The Dubuque Historic Preservation Commission is going to have a preservation fair. And there's one workshop on Friday from 12:30 to 4:30. And then there's 3 workshops on Saturday from 9:30 to 4 p.m. Are there any other communications? Seeing none, we have no old business. We'll move on to new business. Item A is case number DNR HP 19-02, and that's to demolish the residence at 415 East 10th Street. The Joseph Maylet House is individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Staff report.
So we did have a work session last month regarding this property. The next property on your agenda, this property is individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places. You would have to find that the property achieves consistency with section 14.040B, which is designation for a local historic landmark in order to prevent demolition. As we discussed a little bit last month, I think the folks in the 1980s were a little bit far-reaching in some of their research to list these 2 properties. I think they're in a far enough state, and they're the only 2 properties left on the virtually on the block. Staff's opinion that the property doesn't achieve consistency with that section of the code for designating the property individually listed as a local historic landmark. So staff recommends approval of the demolition.
Is there any discussion from commission members? Commissioner Cardis?
Yeah, my only comment would be I agree with staff report.
Seeing no other commissioners with comments, I would entertain a motion to allow the demolition.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Cordis?
Yes.
Wanio?
Yes.
McGivern?
Yes.
Free.
Yes. Item B is case number DNR HP 19-03, and that's demolish residence at 421 East 10th Street. The Joseph Maylet House is individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Staff report.
Virtually the same staff report. This one, the other record was a little unclear. I think this one appears to be built by a bricklayer, but I have a similar argument for the fact that it was a little far-reaching to list it on the National Register as an individually listed property, and so staff recommends, our staff does not believe the property achieves consistency with that section of the code for designating property as a local historic landmark, and so staff recommends approval of this structure as well.
Is there any comments from the commission? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to allow the demolition.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Wanio?
Yes.
McGivern?
Yes.
Cordis? Free.
Yes. Item C is case number COA 19-08. That's construct a new garage at 1645 West 12th Street. The Dr. Kuno Struck House is located in the local historic Marycrest College District. Staff report.
So I think the city's pretty lucky to have somebody like the petitioners that purchased this property. I've had opportunity to sit down and talked with Mr. McDonald. He's owned several historic properties and is going through a very intensive rehabilitation, probably almost a restoration on some of it. This just to give you an idea of where the property is. Property is located here, Marycrest College here, beyond the baseline, just south of 12th. Divisions here and Putnam's here. This is the north side of the residence, very stately. There's the existing garage that would be constructed. They would be looking at constructing the new garage over in this area here. This kind of gives you a bird's eye view to give you how the property is laid out. It's not really overly visible from the street, although some trees have been removed and now you can actually see the house. Again, the existing garage would be located here. They are looking to build a pool in this area here and then modify this for a pool house. What the petitioner and I talked about was that we should come back with whatever the plans are to modify that at a later time. It'd be pretty easy to do. The longer lead item, because essentially, let's see here. So the way the zoning ordinance works, and let me see if I can pick up where the house is. Everything north of the house is considered a front yard. Everything west of the house, from the house to division, is called a corner yard. And the zoning ordinance says you can't build garages, accessory buildings, and pools in the front yard, even though the house is really kind of oriented toward the south, toward the river. So a variance to that regulation would be needed. Staff's opinion, this is probably the best place on the property for it. See if I can get down to I'm sure we all know the property because we've driven up Division Street. They're a little hard to pick up in here, but these are the contour lines that really show where the elevation of the property drops to the south. And so pretty much an ideal location, far away from the house as you can. That would be ideal. This is a site plan that shows where the structure would be. It would be over here. These are the elevations. Petitioner is talking about using a brick on the west elevation, then kind of a hardy board lap siding on the others. Here's an idea of some of the carriage style doors that they were talking about using. Petitioner had sent me this of some of the work they'd done in the interior already. Pretty amazing. And so I don't think we, at least from a staff standpoint, have a concern that the petitioner has, the intent of building anything that's of a higher quality. It's tricky with newer construction because you don't want it to have some false sense of history. You want it to be compatible and consistent. I think they've done a pretty good job of matching the roof lines. I did, for discussion, you look at Taylor School and it's a brick building and then they have hardy board siding. I've also seen different scenarios where they have just a small minor nuance of a smaller brick or something to differentiate. So that's always the tricky discussion about materials, but I think this is a good application, so staff does support it. I would suggest that if you are willing to support it, that you also incorporate maybe as a separate motion or recommendation asking the Zoning Board of Adjustment to approve, or that you would recommend that they approve the variance for placing these structures in the front yard. That's all I have.
Would the petitioner like to address the commission?
Randy McDonald and my wife Mary's back here. We've owned the house since November and really see it as we're just the current caretakers of the place. Unfortunately, over the past, I think close to 20 years, the house has been extremely neglected. The former owners gave it back to the bank. The house, for the most part, has been empty for 2 years. So when we took over, if it rained outside, it rained inside. So that was our biggest challenge, was to get that roof finished. I'm familiar with Dave. I didn't know Dave was on this board until yesterday. I watched one of your videos online, and I zoomed in and saw his name, and I didn't know, but Dave is familiar with our house. He's been a resource for us in helping bring it back to some of its glory. It has a boiler, radiator heat, steam heat. They put forced air in it, and we've removed that to go back to the radiators. And the ceilings, we've hired an artist. Those were in disrepair. That's why I sent those to Ryan. And having those repaired, that's kind of a work in process still. I sent the picture of the fireplace, just as an example. Fortunately, we can afford to do the project. The living room, I hired a couple of strippers to come in. Fortunately, it was a couple ladies. They did a fantastic job stripping the entire mahogany woodwork, $20,000. And the next step, over the years, somebody had taken a strip flooring from like Lumber Liquidators and tore the original flooring out, put it in the living room. Well, my sense was that's not what the house would have had. So we put back mahogany flooring, 3/4 inch mahogany flooring by 2.5 inch, and then put a strip of walnut around the border of the room, and then highlighted another two sections with walnut, just because that's what I think the house would have had, something very similar to that. So really trying to take it back to the downstairs. It's 1917 when you walk in, and I want to retain that. So when you come around that corner and you look at that garage, I want that garage, everybody to think that's the original garage. That other garage was added, not the other way around. So, match the brick, match the shingles that are on the house now. We use GAF slate line shingles. If you guys are familiar with that, I brought a sample of that. I brought a sample of the brick. Working with Riverstone across the river on the brick to match the house. We've done this brick face and a hardy board type siding on another project we did over in Bettendorf. It wasn't a historical house, but again, I just felt I wanted the garage to look like it belonged to the house when it was built. That house was built in '62. It was a former Wirtz funeral home. It was their family house, and basically took that back to its glory, modernized the inside a little bit. This, staying away from the modernization, kitchen is really new appliances, that kind of thing, but the rest of the house, you walk in and I want it to be a time capsule. And hopefully when we're gone, somebody else, because if you want a new house, go build a new house, I guess is our position. And, when the garage is done, you can all come over and see the garage and give you a tour of the house if you don't mind. It's in a little disarray right now. We moved in, and again, have you been there since we moved in? Good. It's yeah. So, but anyway, I hope I hope you see our vision. And again, I've got Dave in my phone, and I have Clifton Manor Consultant as a title for Dave. So he's been a great resource for us. We've owned another older home. It was in Florida, and we went through the same process in Florida and brought that home back, and spent more than we paid for the house. It was bigger than this house, actually. And I think we're getting close to spending about what we paid for this one, and we still got work to do. But if you're serious about it, the money, it's fortunately, we're fortunate that we can afford to do it, and if we couldn't, we wouldn't have purchased the house. Because it's a beautiful house, and we want to get it back to where it belongs. And I've answered anything if you got any questions.
Guess the only real question is this the design you're comfortable with? Because what Ryan was getting at is at least myself, I would be comfortable with if you wanted to wrap the entire new building in the hardy board.
Yeah,
If this is what you're comfortable with, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'm fine with this, and I guess my thought process on this is, I'm gonna guess they wouldn't have done this, but it could have been a possibility because the drawings, even though they had deep pockets for most of these homes, as soon as you walk in on the staff side of the house, all the trim is birch and pine floors. Okay, well, in today's world, it costs more money to have your carpenter switch to birch wood and pine floors versus continuing running and, with material that you're using. So they look to cut corners wherever possible back then, and this would have been a dollar saver back then. And Kuno married well, and he didn't need to worry about dollar savings, but realistically, it could have happened that they would have
Yeah,
saved
he
some.
married from the Gold Coast.
Yeah, he married one of the Peters
Yep.
girls. Yeah. Well, mom and dad lived right next. There's the house. There's his
Yes,
house on
Max.
campus. Yeah. So, and I guess we're trying to create. It looks like it's part of Marycrest, and I want the house to be the house.
Okay.
And not because Marycrest, the architecture looks a lot like they did the same type of, Jacobean style on some of the buildings that face 12th. So anybody that asks where I live and I tell them, they go, oh yeah, that's one of, it's a Marycrest. They know it, but they know it because of Marycrest, not because it's a residence. They think it's more of a commercial building versus a private residence.
I grew up a mile and a half as the crow flied down near Pine and Rockingham Road. So I remember as a child coming up the Division Streets Hill. At that time, the sides of the bluff weren't as overgrown, so you could see the mansion as you came up the hill towards Putnam.
And I don't know if you've driven up Division, but we have cleaned up that hill on Division, and $20,000 to clean up that Division hill,
And it don't take long for it to grow back.
and it doesn't, and a lot of it's grown back. But we put a no-mow grass down, now next year we've cut all the trees that were dead out, took all that stuff out. But some of the stuff that were little bitty trees, you cut them off. Well, they're pretty hardy. They want to come back.
Another option, and I've seen the no-mow grass, but another option we've tried to encourage on hillsides, a number of the small prairie plants, because of their deep roots, they'll hold the hillside, they'll retain water, they don't need to be mowed or cut. We tried to do that on East River Drive, and Public Works staff didn't quite get it right. But anyway, it's a very good design, and the commission is very appreciative of what you're doing with the manor. Are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Cordes?
Yes, I have a question. Are we considering just the zoning appeal issue?
That will be a
Or-
separate motion.
Okay.
That will be a recommendation to the other committee.
Or the COA? Are we considering that all at the
We
same
are
time?
going to consider the COA first, and
Okay.
then I'll ask for an additional motion for a recommendation to the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Okay. Well, my comments are, as follows. I was aware of the mansion for quite a long time, and I was never in it until there was a sale this last year, and I was inside and was quite amazed with it. And then when it eventually did sell, somebody passed me the contact information of the buyers, and I knew that the original blueprints were on file. 'Cause I have a personal copy of the Clausen database. And so I reached out to Randy and Mary and said, would you be interested in a couple copies of the blueprints? And they indicated they would. And so I made sure that got those copied and delivered to them. And by the way, it's one of the most amazing sets of drawings that I have ever seen in going into the incredible detail of the house, both inside and out. Then eventually stopped in over to the house as they were working on it, and somehow got involved with the steam system, another side hobby of mine, and have helped them work through a number of issues. Through the process, I've become very familiar with the home, both inside and out. And however, about the time they were going to move in, I kind of stayed away because I figured they had a lot going on, and the last thing they needed was me trompsing around through their house that they were trying to put their furniture away. And so I not had any discussion with them in advance about this COA, and as it turns out, they didn't realize I was on the commission. So, as I looked at this and studied it, I see a number of things that I now, knowing Mary and Randy, I'm sure they considered all these very subtle points in coming to their conclusions on how to add another garage, or actually add a garage that suits your needs. And so some of these things relate to the zoning issue, and some of them relate to the historic significance and integrity of the property. When you look at the property from wherever you can view it, from either Division or 12th Street, the placement that they're suggesting for this garage is probably the most screened spot on the property, except on the south side, which would be a very negative impact on the property. And it also will serve to provide some separation and screening between the repurposed Marycrest campus and this estate property. And I suppose if the garage wasn't being built, that trees would want to be planted there, or a fence to provide some kind of separation, which is mutually beneficial to both properties. And while I understand all of the rationale that goes into no accessory buildings in the front yard of a residential property, there are reasons for that. And their plan satisfies all those reasons the best way it possibly can. When you look at the house itself and the way it's laid out, all of the principal rooms face the south. So there are windows looking out across the south. There is a large formal terrace area outside on the south. And the largest room of all, the living room, extends the entire west face of the building and has a window on the north, which, if you look out it, it's kind of views down the lane towards the gates. The dining room does have one window facing east, so if this garage was pushed a little bit farther south, it would wind up being in the view shed of one of the principal dining room windows. As it is, as they show it, and both the location of the early garage and the proposed garage, the only windows you would see these structures would be from servants' bedrooms, from the kitchen bedroom, or from pantry windows. It was the service corner of the house. The plan creates a service courtyard. The service buildings are clustered together, and if I had sat with a blank sheet of paper and tried to figure out the best way that I thought it could be done. I don't think I could have come up with a better plan. And my only concern was that the sides that are sided, that hardy plank be the material, not vinyl. And I think using those materials on three sides of the garage meets the preservation criteria that a new building be distinguishable from the historic materials on the property. And I understand wanting to use the brick on the facade that you see when you drive in. So that's my comments on it.
Commissioner McGivern.
I just wanted to tell you, first I drove into your yard or your property last week, so thanks for not shooting. And it's beautiful. As a real estate appraiser and someone active in this market for over 30 years, this is why I think the commission exists for the city of Davenport. You know, we just previously allowed 2 marginal properties to be demolished, and we don't really like that. But there are so many hidden gems in the city of Davenport. Here's one of them. Most citizens of Davenport drive by this property, have never noticed it their entire life. It's just hidden. And when you go in there, it is beautiful. And when this was on the market, I saw it. I saw the interior photos on the multiple list and everything else, and thought, wow, who's going to jump on that hand grenade? You know. And thank you for doing so, first and foremost. And thank you for doing the Hardy board. And I'd like to be able to, with your permission, to use that as an example for other people, even in the central city where we've got multifamily with attached garages, where they want to build and they want to do vinyl, where we could do a brick veneer on the front, even on the alley side, and hardy board it would make such a great difference. And I just want to say thank you for your vision and your investment in Davenport. It's a beautiful property, and I'm glad you got the means to be able to do so, and I'm more than happy to support this. And thank you for your investment in Davenport.
Are there any other discussions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve case number COA 19-08 as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
McGivern,
Yes.
Cordis, Wanio, Free.
Yes. I would entertain a motion to ask the Zoning Board of Adjustment to approve a variance for 1645 West 12th Street.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Cordis, Wanio, McGivern,
Yes.
Free.
Yes. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have no other business tonight. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the commission tonight? Seeing none? Okay. Commissioner Cordis.
The city of Davenport has been very fortunate with some very high-profile or very significant properties in the last few years, where it has just been kind of the superb alignment of the stars seemed to take place that matched the perfect owner with property. And the first one in this series that I'm thinking of is the Stones with the Lambright Isles Peterson House. And then Peter and Jeff, who purchased Overview Mansion and are doing incredible work there. And then Randy and Mary with Clifton. And there couldn't be a better match between each one of these 3 owners and the properties that they've ended up with, and I'm very thankful for it.
I had a chance to visit the Overlook and got to walk in and just to hear the. First of all historic property owners are just extremely passionate about their home, but just to hear the level of detail that they were willing to go through to bring that house back was pretty incredible.
Is there any other comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the commission is adjourned.